Chapter 31 Fire and Ice. The castle of Winterfell settled into the deep, heavy silence of the wolf hour. The feasts were done, the servants had retired to their pallets, and the only sound was the wind howling against the granite walls. A lonely, mournful song that had sung the Starks to sleep for 8,000 years. Ned Stark walked the corridors of the great keep. His boots were soft leather tonight, making no sound on the stone. He had scrubbed the soot of the glass furnace from his skin, though the smell of wood smoke and ozone still seemed to cling to him, a reminder of the industry that was slowly waking the North. He felt tired, not the bone-deep exhaustion of the war, nor the frantic drain of using the Force to heal, but the good, heavy weariness of a man who has built something. He reached the heavy oak door of the nursery. This was the heart of the castle now. Not the great hall, not the crypts, but this room where the future slept. The room was warm, heated by the vents from the hot springs that ran through the walls. A single tallow candle burned in a niche, casting long, wavering shadows. There were 2 cribs. In the first, Cregan Stark slept like a starfish, limbs sprawled in every direction. Blanket kicked off. He was snoring softly, a tiny, rhythmic rumble that sounded like a bear cub. Ned smiled. His heir, the boy who would one day rule this land. In the second crib usually lay Jon, but the second crib was empty. Ned didn't panic. He sensed the life in the room. He turned his gaze to the rocking chair in the corner, hidden in the shadows of the heavy velvet drapes. Lyanna was there. She was dressed in a simple nightgown of white wool, her dyed red hair loose around her shoulders. She was curled up in the large chair, her feet tucked under her, and in her arms, pressed against her chest, was Jon. She wasn't rocking him. She was just holding him. Her cheek was resting on the top of his head, her eyes closed. She looked peaceful in a way she never did during the day. Ned watched them. He felt the bond between them in the Force, a bright, silver cord of love that was stronger than any chain. Jon was asleep, his tiny hand gripping the fabric of Lyanna's gown. She risked so much just to hold him, Ned thought. If a servant walked in, if a guest lost their way, but she didn't care. For these few hours in the night, the lie didn't exist. There was no Rhaegar, no Robert, no rebellion. Just a mother and her son. Ned felt a lump form in his throat. He wanted to go to her, to kiss her forehead, to tell her she was safe. But he knew that would break the spell. This was her moment, her stolen time. He smiled, a sad, soft expression that no one saw. He backed out of the room, using the Force to close the door as silently as a ghost. The walk to his own chambers felt lighter. The sight of Lyanna and Jon had settled something in his chest. The pack was safe. The pack was together. He opened the door. The room was bathed in the warm glow of the hearth fire. The massive bed, draped in furs, dominated the center of the room. But Ned's eyes went immediately to the vanity table near the window. Ashera was there. She was sitting on a cushioned stool, facing a large bronze mirror. She wore a nightgown of sheer violet silk, something she must have brought from Starfall, for no northern loom wove fabric that fine or that revealing. It clung to her like water, shimmering in the firelight. She was brushing her hair. Long, dark strokes, the brush moving rhythmically through the midnight cascade that fell down her back. Ned stood by the door for a moment, just watching her. She was breathtaking. Even after the war, after the birth, after the journey to this frozen end of the world, she shone. The contrast between her delicate, southern beauty and the rough, heavy stone of Winterfell was striking. She was a flower blooming in a fortress. Ashera paused, the brush midstroke. Her eyes flicked to the mirror, catching his reflection in the doorway. "You're staring, my lord," she said, her voice a low, teasing hum. "I'm admiring the view," Ned replied, closing the door and locking it. "It's better than the glass furnace." "I should hope so," Ashera laughed softly. "That furnace smells of ash. You smell like pine, and snow, and sweat," Ned asked, walking toward her. "A little," she admitted, watching him approach in the glass. "But it's honest sweat, the sweat of a man who builds." Ned reached her. He stood behind the stool, looking down at her reflection. Their eyes met in the bronze. Her violet gaze was dark, dilated in the dim light. "Give me that," Ned whispered. He reached down and gently took the brush from her hand. His fingers brushed hers, callous skin against silk-soft palms. Ashera surrendered the brush with a small smile. She leaned back slightly, offering her hair to him. Ned began to brush. He was careful, His hands, which could crush a man's throat or wield a great sword with terrifying speed, moved with infinite tenderness. He started at the ends, working out the small tangles, then moved up to the scalp. Stroke, stroke, stroke. The silence in the room was intimate, heavy with unsaid things. "You were with the children?" Ashera asked, her voice sleepy and relaxed under the rhythm of the brush. "I was," Ned said. "Cregan is sleeping like a log. He's taken over the entire crib." "He gets that from you," Ashera teased. "You sprawl." "I do not sprawl," Ned protested lightly, gathering her hair in one hand to brush the underside. "I occupy strategic territory." Is that what you call taking all the blankets?" "That is resource management. The north is cold." "It is," Ashera agreed. She shivered slightly, though the room was warm. "But you keep me warm." Ned set the brush down on the table. He rested his hands on her shoulders. Her skin was warm, smooth as the glass he had made that morning. He let his thumbs trace the line of her collarbone, feeling the pulse beat steadily at the base of her throat. "You are tense," Ned murmured. "It's the cold," she said, leaning her head back against his stomach. "It gets into the bones, even with the fires." "Then we'll have to find other ways to warm you up," Ned said. He bent down. He kissed the sensitive spot just below her ear. Ashera gasped softly. Her head tilted to the side, giving him access. Ned kissed her neck. Slow, deliberate kisses. He tasted the jasmine oil she used, the salt of her skin. He let his lips trail down the column of her throat, finding the pulse point. "Ned," she breathed, her hands coming up to cover his on her shoulders. "You smell of Dorn," Ned whispered against her skin. "Of summer. And you have cold lips?" she teased, though her voice was breathless. "Winter is coming." "Winter is here," Ned corrected. He nipped lightly at the junction of her neck and shoulder. "But the wolf has a thick coat." Ashera turned in the stool. She spun around to face him, her silk gown shifting, revealing the curve of her legs through the fabric. She looked up at him, her eyes playful and hungry. "Is that all the wolf has?" she asked, arching an eyebrow. "A coat." Ned grinned. It was the smile he reserved only for her, the smile that melted the ice of his public persona. "The wolf has teeth," Ned warned. He leaned down and captured her lips. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was deep, possessive. It tasted of wine and longing. Ashera responded instantly, her hands tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. Her mouth opened to him, hot and welcoming. Ned groaned low in his throat. The softness of her lips, the heat of her body, the scent of her desire. It was intoxicating. He broke the kiss, pulling back just an inch. Their foreheads rested together. "You represent a serious distraction to my ruling, Lady Stark," Ned murmured. "Good," Ashera whispered, tracing the line of his jaw with her thumb. "The north can wait until morning. Tonight you belong to the south." Ned looked down at her. The silk gown had slipped slightly off one shoulder. He ran his hand down her arm, marveling at the contrast between his rough hand and her pale skin. "This gown," Ned said, hooking a finger under the strap. "It's very thin." "It's Dornish silk," Ashera said, her eyes darkening. "It breathes." "It hides nothing," Ned corrected. His gaze dropped, sweeping over her body. The silk left little to the imagination. He could see the curve of her breasts, the nip of her waist, the swell of her hips. "I can see every curve," Ashera smirked. "Do you approve of the architecture, Lord Builder?" "I think I need to inspect the foundation," Ned growled. He didn't give her time to respond. He bent down and swept her up into his arms. Ashera squealed, a delighted sound, wrapping her legs around his waist and her arms around his neck. "Ned," she laughed. "I can walk." "Not tonight," Ned said. "Tonight, you fly." He carried her across the room. He didn't drop her. He wasn't reckless. He walked to the massive four-poster bed and tossed her onto the furs. Ashera landed with a bounce, laughing, her hair fanning out like a dark halo across the white wolf pelts. The violet silk rode up her thighs, exposing long, slender legs. She looked up at him, her laughter fading into a sultry smile. She propped herself up on her elbows. "Well?" she challenged. "Are you going to stand there and stare? Or are you going to join me?" Ned unbuckled his belt. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. "I'm thinking," Ned teased, unlacing his tunic. "I have a lot of paperwork." The glass gardens? The letter to the wall. Ashera narrowed her eyes playfully. She slowly, deliberately, lowered one strap of her gown, revealing the creamy slope of her shoulder. Paperwork? She asked innocently. Ned kicked his boots off. The paperwork can burn. He pounced. He landed on the bed, hovering over her, supporting his weight on his arms so he didn't crush her. Ashera gasped, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, feeling the hard muscle beneath his shirt. "You're heavy," she whispered, though she pulled him down. "I'm grounded," Ned said. He nuzzled her nose with his. "Solid." "You're a brute," she countered, running her hands down his back. "I'm a Stark," Ned said. "We're wildlings at heart." He kissed her again, deeper this time. He let his weight settle onto her, pressing her into the mattress. He felt every inch of her against him, soft where he was hard, yielding where he was firm. His hand moved down her side, tracing the curve of her hip through the silk. He kneaded the flesh gently. "You've lost weight," he murmured against her mouth. "Since the birth." "Is that a complaint?" Ashera asked breathlessly. "An observation," Ned said. His hand moved lower, finding the hem of the gown. His fingers brushed the bare skin of her thigh. "I liked you round. I like you slender. I just like you." He trailed his fingers up her inner thigh. Ashera shivered, her head falling back into the pillows. "Ned, tell me to stop," he whispered, biting lightly at her collarbone. "Don't you dare," she hissed. Ned smiled against her skin. He sat up, straddling her hips. He looked down at her. Her face was flushed, her lips swollen, her eyes hazy with lust. She was the mother of his son, the lady of his castle, and the desire of his life. "You know," Ned said, his voice rough, "they say Dornish women are fire." "They are," Ashera agreed, reaching up to undo the laces of his shirt. Her fingers were nimble, eager. "And they say northern men are ice," Ned continued, letting her strip the shirt from his shoulders. He tossed it aside, revealing a chest scarred by war but built by labor. "Ice melts," Ashera whispered, running her palms over his chest, "when you get it hot enough." "Or," Ned said, leaning down until his lips were an inch from hers, "fire consumes, and ice preserves. Maybe I'm just here to make sure you last forever." Ashera laughed, a throaty sound. "That was terrible poetry, Ned." "I'm a lord, not a bard," Ned grinned. "Then stop talking," Ashera commanded. She pulled his head down. "And show me that Stark stamina." Ned obliged. He kissed her, his hands exploring her body with a reverence and a hunger that made Ashera gasp. He teased the strap of her gown down her arm, pressing kisses to the exposed skin. He teased the curve of her breast, circling but not touching, until she arched her back, demanding more. "Please," she whimpered. "Patience," Ned murmured. "Winter is long. We have all night." He moved his hand up her leg again, slow and deliberate. He felt the heat radiating from her. "You are burning up," Ned noted. "You did this?" she accused. "I did," Ned agreed. He pulled the gown up, exposing her to the firelight. He looked at her body, the soft curve of her belly, the wideness of her hips, the beauty of the woman who had carried his child. "Perfect," Ned whispered. Ashera blushed, trying to cover herself. "I have marks. From Cregan." Ned gently pulled her hands away. He kissed the faint stretch marks on her hip. "Battle scars," Ned said fiercely. "Proof of life. They are silver, like your house." He moved over her, his eyes locking with hers. The teasing was done. The playfulness faded into a raw, intense need. "Ashera," he said. "Ned," she replied. He entered her. It wasn't fast or frantic. It was a slow, deep joining, acclaiming. Ashera cried out, digging her nails into his shoulders. Ned groaned, burying his face in her neck, overwhelmed by the sensation of home. They moved together in the firelight, the rhythm of the bed creaking in time with the wind outside. Fire and ice, south and north, binding themselves together in the dark. For a long time, there were only soft sounds, gasps, whispers, the friction of skin on skin. Much later, the fire had burned down to embers. Ned lay on his back, Ashera curled against his side, her head on his chest. He played with a strand of her hair, wrapping it around his finger. She was tracing patterns on his chest with her index finger. "You weren't kidding," she murmured sleepily. "About what?" Ned asked, his voice a deep rumble in his chest. The stamina, she said. She propped herself up on her chin to look at him. Did you learn that from a book too? Like your glass gardens? Ned chuckled. Some things can't be learned from books, my lady. Some things are just stark endurance. Well, Ashera yawned, settling back down. I approve of stark endurance. We should utilize it often. I intend to, Ned promised. He pulled the furs up over them, cocooning them against the chill of the room. Ned, are we going to be okay? She asked quietly. With the lies? With the secrets? Ned tightened his arm around her. He thought of Lina in the nursery. He thought of John and Cregan. He thought of the letter he had sent to the wall. We will be more than okay, Ned said. We will be strong. The North is hard, Ash, but it protects its own. As long as we are together, nothing can touch us. The pack, she whispered. The pack, Ned agreed. He kissed the top of her head. Sleep now, my star. Tomorrow we have work to do. Tomorrow, she mumbled, already drifting off. Ned lay awake for a while longer, listening to the wind. He felt the force settling around the castle, a protective blanket woven from his own will and the ancient magic of the stones. He was the Lord of Winterfell. He was a husband. He was a father. And for the first time in his 2 lives, Ned Stark felt completely, perfectly content. He closed his eyes and let the darkness take him. Chapter 32, The Flow of the River. The morning air in Winterfell was crisp enough to freeze breath in the lungs, but in the training yard, the heat of exertion kept the cold at bay. Ned walked out of the great keep, pausing on the steps to watch. The yard was busy. Guards were running drills, the rhythmic thud-thud-thud of wooden practice swords against shields creating a steady heartbeat for the castle. In the center ring, drawing the eyes of every off-duty soldier and servant, were 2 figures. One was Benjen Stark. At 14, he was lanky, growing into his limbs, moving with the eager, frantic energy of a puppy who hadn't yet realized how big his paws were. He wielded a castle-forged longsword with 2 hands, hacking and slashing with more enthusiasm than form. The other was Arthur Dayne. The sword of the morning wore simple boiled leather and a gray cloak, but he moved like a king in silk. He held 2 practice swords, weighted wood, and he used them with a casual, devastating grace. He wasn't trying to win, he was teaching. He parried Benjen's heavy overhand chop with a flick of his left wrist, stepped inside the guard, and tapped Benjen's ribs with the sword in his right hand. Dead, Arthur said calmly. Benjen groaned, stepping back and rubbing his side. You're too fast. You are too committed, Arthur corrected, resetting his stance. You swing that sword as if the weight of the world is behind it. It makes you slow. It makes you predictable. Don't fight the sword, Benjen. Guide it. Benjen gritted his teeth and charged again. This time he feinted low and swung high. It was a good move for a boy. Arthur didn't even blink. He caught the high swing on his crossguard, spun, and swept Benjen's legs out from under him with the flat of his other blade. Benjen hit the mud with a splat. Dead again, Arthur noted. I hate you, Benjen wheezed, staring up at the gray sky. Get up, Arthur said, extending a hand. The wall won't care if you're tired. The wildlings won't care if the mud is cold. Ned smiled, walking down the steps. He's right, Ben, although I think he's enjoying knocking you down a bit too much. Arthur turned, a genuine smile breaking his stoic mask. Lord Stark, your brother has spirit, but he fights like an umber. All fury, no flow. Benjen took Arthur's hand and hauled himself up, wiping mud from his face. Ned, did you see? I almost had him on the feint. I saw you land on your back, Ned pointed out dryly. But the footwork was better. Arthur looked at Ned. There was a glint in his violet eyes. A challenge. Since the Tower of Joy, the warrior in him, the perfectionist who had spent a lifetime mastering the blade, was itching to fight again and understand how he lost. You're dressed for the yard, my lord, Arthur observed, noting Ned's padded doublet and training trousers. I need to keep my hand in, Ned said, rolling his shoulders. Ruling is mostly sitting in chairs and reading ledgers. It makes a man stiff. Arthur tossed one of his wooden swords to a squire and walked over to the rack. He picked up 2 fresh wasters, heavier ones, weighted with lead cores. Care for a dance? Arthur asked. The yard went quiet. The guards stopped their drills. Even Roderick Castle paused his inspection of the archers. A spar between the Lord of Winterfell and the Sword of the Morning was not something you saw every day. Ned looked at the wooden swords. He looked at Arthur. Why not? Ned said. He grabbed a single hand-and-a-half waster from the rack. They circled each other in the mud. Arthur held his dual blades low, relaxed. He was the perfect predator. Ned held his sword in a standard high guard, but his stance was different. Grounded. Still. Come, Ned said. Arthur attacked. It wasn't the playful tapping he had used on Benjen. It was a whirlwind. Arthur launched a flurry of strikes. High, low, left, right, testing Ned's defense, looking for a crack. Ned didn't give him one. Ned felt the air displacement of the wooden blades before they arrived. He parried efficiently, moving just enough to deflect the energy, never wasting motion. Clack, 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 clack. The sound of wood on wood was a staccato rhythm, faster than a heartbeat. Arthur pressed the advantage. He spun, bringing both swords down in a scissor cut. Ned stepped through the attack, jamming his hilt into Arthur's chest to shove him back. Arthur stumbled but recovered instantly, laughing. Good. You're awake. I try to be. Ned grinned. He watched Arthur. He saw the potential in the man. Arthur Dayne was already at the peak of human conditioning. His reflexes were honed by decades of practice. But he was limited by his senses, by the speed of thought. He can do more, Ned thought. He just needs to stop thinking. Again, Ned commanded. Arthur charged. As they fought, Ned reached out with his mind. He didn't use the force to push Arthur or slow him down. He used it to nudge. He touched Arthur's consciousness. It was a bright, sharp thing like a diamond, but it was rigid. It was calculating angles, speed, fatigue. Let go. Ned projected the thought not as words but as a feeling. Stop planning. Just be. Don't think, Arthur, Ned said aloud, parrying a thrust. Your mind is too slow. Your body knows what to do. Let it flow. Arthur frowned, confused, but he redoubled his efforts. He attacked faster. Ned stepped up the pressure. He began to attack back, forcing Arthur to defend. Ned's strikes were impossibly fast, coming from angles that shouldn't have worked. Flow, Ned urged, his voice dropping into a rhythmic cadence. Like the river, don't fight the current. Be the current. Arthur was sweating. He was trying to track Ned's blade, trying to anticipate. Let go. Ned pushed a wave of calm into Arthur's mind. A suggestion of tranquility in the midst of chaos. Something clicked. Arthur's eyes glazed over slightly. The furrow in his brow smoothed out. He stopped trying to track Ned's sword and simply moved. His left hand parried a strike he hadn't even seen. His right hand lashed out in a counterstrike that Ned actually had to dodge. The rhythm changed. Arthur wasn't fighting anymore, he was dancing. His swords became a blur of motion, a seamless wall of defense and offense. He was moving faster than he ever had in his life. He was tapping into the force, not wielding it but letting it flow through him. Conduit. Benjen watched, mouth agape. By the gods! Ned smiled. He parried a strike that would have taken his ear off. He ducked a decapitating swing. Arthur was magnificent. He was a storm of wood and intent. For a full minute, they fought at a level that no one in the yard could comprehend. It was a blur of motion, a symphony of violence. But the human body has limits. Arthur wasn't conditioned for the channel. The strain of the flow began to tax his muscles. His breathing grew ragged. Enough, Ned decided. He sensed the dip in Arthur's energy. Ned stepped in. He caught Arthur's right-hand blade on his crossguard, twisted to lock it, and used his free hand to grab Arthur's left wrist. He wrenched the sword from Arthur's grip. With a sweep of his leg, he knocked Arthur's feet out from under him. Arthur hit the mud. He lay there for a second, staring at the gray sky. Then he blinked, the trance breaking. He sat up, shaking his head as if waking from a deep sleep. He looked at his hands. He looked at Ned. What? Arthur gasped. What was that? That, Ned said, offering him a hand up, was you, getting out of your own way. Arthur took the hand. He was trembling slightly. I didn't see you. I just knew where you were. I felt the wind on the blade. It was like I wasn't there. Mushin, Ned whispered the earth term, then corrected himself. The empty mind. He looked around the yard. The soldiers were staring in awe. Show's over, Ned barked. Back to work. The enemies won't wait for you to gawk. The yard sprang back to activity, though the whispers continued. Ned turned to Benjen and Arthur. Come with me. He walked toward the gate leading to the Godswood. As he passed a stack of hay bales near the armory, he stopped. He didn't look, but he sensed a familiar, fiery signature hiding behind them. You too, Anna, Ned called out. You can stop hiding. I know you were watching. There was a rustle of straw. A moment later, a woman with auburn hair stepped out. She wore simple woolen clothes, her new identity wrapped around her like armor. I was just checking on Benjen, Anna lied, crossing her arms. You were studying the footwork, Ned corrected. Come on. The Godswood of Winterfell was a place out of time. The noise of the castle faded as soon as they passed the gate, replaced by the hushed whisper of the wind in the sentinel trees and the murmur of the hot springs. Ned led them to the heart tree. The weirwood's face was weeping red sap, its eyes watching them with ancient, silent judgment. He motioned for them to sit on the mossy roots. Arthur looked uncomfortable. He was a man of the Seven, a knight of the South. This was a pagan place to him. But he sat. Benjen and Anna sat cross-legged, looking at their brother with expectation. What happened in the yard? Arthur asked again. That speed. It wasn't natural. It was natural, Ned said, leaning against the white trunk of the tree. It was the most natural thing in the world. It is the energy that binds everything together. He looked at them. The maesters call it magic and dismiss it. The septons call it heresy. The first men, our ancestors, they called it the breath of the old gods. Ned held out his hand. He focused. A layer of snow near Arthur's boot twitched. Then it rose. A perfect sphere of compressed snow floated into the air, hovering at eye level. Arthur flinched. Benjen's eyes widened. Anna leaned forward, fascinated. I call it the Force, Ned said. It is in the trees, the rocks, the water. It is in you. Magic, Benjen whispered. Like the children of the forest. Similar, Ned agreed. The children sang to the earth. The Greenseers look through time. What I did at the tower, Arthur. It is tapping into that same river. I can guide it. I can strengthen my limbs with it. I can heal flesh. He looked at Arthur. You felt it today. In the yard. You let the river take you. It felt. Arthur struggled for the word. Clear. Perfect. Can we learn it? Anna asked, her voice hungry. She had always wanted to be more than a lady in a castle. She wanted to be a warrior. You can, Ned said. But it is not like learning to swing a sword. It is not muscle memory. It is will. He paused, considering how to explain the limitations. The mind is a door, Ned said. When we are children, the door is open. We see the world as it is, full of wonder and connection. As we grow, we close the door. We learn rules. We learn limits. We learn impossible. He looked at Arthur. You are the greatest knight who ever lived, Arthur. But your mind is set. You are rigid. Your door is closed and barred by years of discipline and duty. You felt it today because I pushed the door open for you, but to do it yourself, it will be the hardest thing you have ever done. Arthur looked at his hands. I am too old? Not too old, Ned said. Just too finished. A clay pot that has already been fired is hard to reshape without breaking. He turned to Benjen. Benjen is young. His mind is still soft clay. He can learn. And me? Anna asked. You are a Stark, Ned said. The blood of the first men is strong in you. The wolf blood. It is wild, chaotic energy. You have the potential, Anna, but you lack control. So teach us, Benjen said, bouncing on his heels. I will try, Ned said. Let's see what you have. He moved to Benjen first. Close your eyes, Ben. Breathe. Listen to the wind. Don't hear it with your ears. Feel it on your skin. Feel the life in the tree behind you. Benjen closed his eyes. He screwed up his face in concentration. Don't force it, Ned chided gently. Relax. Ned placed his hand on Benjen's shoulder. He sent a small pulse of force energy into his brother. A gentle probe, looking for the reservoir of power within the boy. He found it immediately, but it didn't flow. Sat there heavy and dense. It was like touching a glacier. Cold, solid, immovable. When Ned pushed, the energy didn't yield. It fortified. It was an instinctual defense, a wall of spiritual ice slamming down. Ned's hand wasn't just stopped. It was physically shoved off Benjen's shoulder by an invisible wave of pressure. Benjen's eyes snapped open. Whoa, what was that? Arthur stared. He didn't move. But your hand. His spirit pushed back, Ned said, smiling. Like a wall of ice. You are a guardian, Ben. He moved to Anna. Your turn. Anna closed her eyes. She didn't need to be told to relax. She fell into a stillness that reminded Ned of the wolf waiting to pounce. He touched her shoulder. He sent the pulse. It was chaos. It wasn't the solid wall of Ben-Jen. It was a thunderstorm. Her energy swirled around his probe, chaotic, hot, and jagged. Felt sharp. Felt like lightning looking for a ground. Snap. Ned felt a static shock against his palm. His hand was thrown back, his fingers tingling as if he'd touched a live wire. Ouch! Ned muttered, rubbing his hand. Anna opened her eyes, grinning. Did I do that? You have the spark, Ned confirmed. You are the storm, Anna. Wild, untamed, but powerful. You will be a striker. He turned finally to Arthur. Sir Arthur. Arthur closed his eyes. He sat perfectly still, his breathing controlled. He was a master of meditation in the martial sense. Ned touched his shoulder. He sent the pulse. He felt Arthur's energy. It wasn't ice and it wasn't a storm. It was light. It was orderly, structured, and precise, like a fortress of white stone. It didn't fight back immediately. It analyzed the intrusion, categorized it, and then deflected it. It was a gentle, firm resistance. Ned's hand wasn't thrown off. It was simply slid away, as if he had tried to push against a greased shield. Different, Ned mused. Bad, Arthur asked, opening his eyes. No, Ned said. Controlled. Your connection is quiet, constant. It isn't the roaring river of the Starks. It is clarity. You will master the flow. Ned stood up and walked to the center of the circle. This is where we start, Ned said. Every morning, before the sun rises, we meet here. We meditate. We learn to feel the world. And then we learn to throw rocks? Ben-Jen asked eagerly. Then you learn to lift a pebble, Ned corrected, without touching it. If you can lift a pebble, you can lift a mountain. The principle is the same. Close your eyes, Ned commanded. The three of them obeyed. Reach out, Ned guided. Don't look inward. Look out. Feel the heat of the springs under the earth. Feel the cold of the snow. Feel the heartbeat of the raven in the branches above. He walked among them, his voice a low drone, guiding them into the first steps of a larger world. You are not your body, Ned recited, translating the Jedi code into Westerosi thought. You are the light. You are the connection. The flesh is just a vessel. Ben-Jen frowned, struggling. Anna swayed slightly, caught in the rhythm. Arthur sat like stone. Ned watched them. It will take time, he thought. Years. But if I can train them, if I can build a circle of Force users in the north. He imagined Ben-Jen on the wall, sensing wildlings miles away. He imagined Anna, defending her son with a blade that moved faster than sight. He imagined Arthur, the sword of the morning, wielding dawn with the power of a Jedi master. It was a dangerous path. The Citadel would burn them for witches. The Faith would call them demons. But the Night King wouldn't care about their titles. Ned sat down and joined them in the meditation. The wind rustled the leaves of the weirwood. The red face seemed to smile. The wolf pack was evolving. Chapter 33, The Foundations of Winter. The arrival of a new maester was usually a quiet affair, marked by the rattling of chains and the scratching of quills. But for Ned Stark, it was a strategic vulnerability assessment. Maester Luwin arrived at Winterfell a moon after the accident that had claimed Whaleys. He was a small man with gray eyes and thin hair, shivering in his robes as he climbed down from the cart that had brought him from White Harbor. He looked nothing like the pinched, watery-eyed Whaleys. He looked kind. Ned sat in the Lord Solar, waiting. The fire was roaring, heating the room to a comfortable temperature that seemed to surprise Luwin as he was ushered in. Lord Stark, Luwin said, bowing low, his chain clinking softly. Valyrian steel, iron, gold, silver. A man of many links. It is an honor. I am Maester Luwin, sent by the Citadel to serve Winterfell. Maester, Ned said, not rising. You are welcome here. The North has need of learned men. He watched Luwin carefully. He didn't just look. He reached. Ned extended his awareness. He didn't drill into Luwin's mind like a pickaxe. He let his perception settle over the man like a heavy cloak. He felt for the jagged spikes of malice, the muddy colors of deceit, or the cold void of ambition. What he found was gray. It was a calm, orderly mind. Luwin was thinking about the warmth of the room, the state of the library he had yet to inspect, and the young lord in front of him who looked far too grim for his years. There was loyalty there, loyalty to his vows, loyalty to the citadel, and a nascent desire to do a good job in this frozen outpost. Ned relaxed the mental grip. Luwin blinked, rubbing his temple as if a sudden headache had passed. "My lord," Luwin asked, sensing the shift in the air. "I was just thinking," Ned said smoothly. "My father relied heavily on his maester. I intend to do the same. But I must warn you, Maester Luwin, Winterfell is changing. We are trying new things here. Things the Citadel might not find in their books. Learning is a lifelong pursuit, my lord." Luwin smiled, a gentle crinkling of eyes. "If you are teaching, I am ready to learn." "Good," Ned said, "because we are going to be very busy. I need a count of the winter stores. I need an estimation of grain yields for the next 3 years. And I need you to help me design a sanitation system for a town of 30,000. Luwin's eyes widened. 30,000? Wintertown is barely 10,000. "Not for long," Ned said. "Go get settled, Maester. We start tomorrow." A castle is a living thing. It breathes, it eats, and it listens. Ned knew that secrets were the most valuable currency in Westeros. And right now, Winterfell was holding the most expensive secret in history. Jon Snow. He couldn't afford leaks. During the weeks it took for the glass materials to arrive, Ned didn't sit idle. He hunted. He walked the corridors at odd hours. He stood in the shadows of the Great Hall during dinner. He sat in the Godswood, extending his senses until he could feel the heartbeat of every person within the walls. Most people felt like background noise, hunger, fatigue, lust, boredom. But spies felt sharp. They felt anxious. They felt like people watching a door instead of walking through it. He caught the first one in the stables. A groom, barely 20, was listening at the door of the guest house while Arthur Dayne and Lyanna were talking. Ned stepped out of the shadows. "Interesting conversation?" Ned asked. The boy jumped, spinning around. "My lord, I was just checking the horses." "The horses are in the stalls," Ned said, his voice low. "You are at the door." He reached into the boy's mind. "Fear, guilt, coin. Who pays you?" Ned asked. He pushed a pulse of command into the words. "A man," the boy blurted out, his eyes glazing over. "In White Harbor. He gives me silvers to tell him who comes and goes." It didn't matter. The leak had to be plugged. Ned didn't execute him. The wall needed men, and execution was a waste of a strong back. "You like listening?" Ned asked. "You can listen for wildlings. Pack your things. Corgyle is coming in a few days. He will take you with him. Until then, you will be staying in the Duggians." The boy paled, falling to his knees. "The wall? Please, my lord." "It's the wall or the block," Ned said coldly. "Choose." The purge continued. He found a scullery maid who was smuggling letters out in laundry baskets. She was sending reports to a contact in Serwyn. Ned sent her to the Hornwoods, with a letter to Lord Halley's to put her to work in the deep kitchens where she would never see a raven. He found 3 children who were being paid in sweets to count the number of guards on the walls. They were just children. They didn't understand. Ned sat them down in his solar. He gave them sweets. And then he gave them jobs. "You have sharp eyes," Ned told them. "I need sharp eyes. But you look for me now. You watch the walls. You watch the strangers. And you tell no one but me. Understand?" The children nodded, eyes wide, mouths full of honeycakes. Ned assigned a trusted guard, one of the survivors of the Trident, to watch over them. They were his little birds now. But unlike Varys, Ned kept them in a cage. By the end of the moon, the castle was tight. The whispers stopped. The only secrets leaving Winterfell were the ones Ned Stark wanted to leave. While Ned secured the walls, Ashera Stark secured the hearth. Winterfell was grim. The servants were used to Stark austerity, hard beds, cold food, and silence. They were suspicious of the new southern lady with her purple eyes and silk dresses. Ashera noticed the side glances. She felt the coldness that had nothing to do with the weather. She didn't retreat. She advanced. She walked into the great kitchens, the heart of the castle's domestic life. Gage, the head cook, was a burly man who had served Rickard Stark for 30 years. He stopped chopping turnips when she entered, wiping his hands on a greasy apron. "My lady," Gage grunted. clearly unhappy about a noblewoman invading his domain. "Gage," Ashera said, her voice warm and melodious. "It smells hearty in here." "It's stew, my lady," Gage said defensively. "Keeps the men warm." "It does," Ashera agreed, stepping closer to the massive cauldron. She picked up a spoon and tasted it. It was bland, salty, meaty, but lifeless. "It needs heat," Ashera said gently. Gage frowned. "It's boiling, my lady." "Not that kind of heat," Ashera smiled. She reached into the pouch at her belt and pulled out a small jar of dried Dornish peppers she had brought from Starfall. "May I?" Gage looked skeptical but nodded. Ashera crumbled a pinch of the red flakes into the pot. She stirred it. "Try it now." Gage dipped his spoon. He tasted it. His eyebrows shot up. The heat bloomed in his chest, chasing away the chill of the drafty kitchen. "That's warming," Gage admitted. "The north is cold," Ashera said, addressing the kitchen staff who were watching. "We need fire in our bellies. Gage, I want to see the winter clothes distribution. I noticed the laundresses shivering yesterday. If they are cold, the linens are cold. If the linens are cold, the Lord is cold." She looked at the head housekeeper, a stern woman named Corey. "We have wool in the stores," Ashera said. "Let's use it. New cloaks for the staff. Thicker blankets for the barracks. Lord Stark wants his people warm." Willa looked at Ashera, surprised by the concern. "That would be generous, my lady." "It is necessary," Ashera corrected. "We are a household, a family." She smiled at them, a dazzling Starfall smile that seemed to light up the soot-stained room. "Now," Ashera said, turning back to Gage, "about this venison for tonight. Have you ever tried roasting it with honey and thyme?" By the time she left, Gage was humming a Dornish tune, and the staff was looking at her not as a stranger, but as the woman who brought the sun. The mornings belonged to the Force. The Godswood became their sanctuary. Before the sun rose, when the mist was still clinging to the hot pools, the four of them would gather. Ned, Benjen, Arthur, Anna. They sat in a circle around the heart tree. "Breathe," Ned instructed. "Feel the cold. Do not fight it. Let it pass through you." Benjen was the hardest to teach, but the most stable. His connection to the Force was slow to rouse, but immovable. He struggled with telekinesis. Lifting a rock made him sweat and shake. But his ability to shield himself was prodigious. "Push him," Ned ordered Arthur. Arthur Dane extended a hand. He sent a wave of force pressure at Benjen. It wasn't a full blast, but enough to knock a man over. Benjen grunted. He didn't move. He didn't block it with his hands. He blocked it with his will. The energy hit him and dissipated. "Good," Ned nodded. "Your defense is solid, Ben. You endure." Anna was the opposite. Anna was restless. The meditation bored her. She wanted to do. "Lift the stone, Anna," Ned said. She glared at the stone. It didn't just lift. It shot into the air, smashing into a tree trunk and shattering. "Oops," she muttered. "Control," Ned sighed. "You have raw power, Anna. But power without direction is dangerous. You must channel it." He worked with her on force speed. Suited her. She was naturally fast, agile. With the Force, she became difficult to track. Ned sparred with her. He moved at half speed, letting her press him. She attacked with a fury that was terrifying, her wooden sword humming through the air. "Faster," Ned urged. "Don't think about the strike. Be the strike." She flowed. She dipped under his guard and tapped his chest. "Got you," she grinned, breathless. "You did," Ned admitted. "You're fast, Laya. Quick, deadly. But you leave yourself open. Open. If you get hit, you fall. Don't get hit." And then there was Arthur. The sword of the morning was a prodigy. His mind, disciplined by years of knighthood, took to the mental aspects of the Force easily. He didn't have the raw power of the Starks. He couldn't shatter rocks or freeze water, but his ability to anticipate was evolving into something beautiful. He could enter a state of flow where he was untouchable. He sensed attacks before they happened. He moved with an economy of motion that made him seem lazy, until you realized his blade was already at your throat. "Your focus is your strength," Ned told him. "You guide the battle. You don't just fight your opponent. You sense the space around them. It feels silent." Arthur described it one morning, resting Dawn on his knees, "like the world holds its breath before I move." "That is the center," Ned said. "Stay there. Ned watched them. They were growing stronger every day. We will need it, he thought, looking up at the red leaves of the weirwood. The long night is coming, and 3 warriors won't be enough. But it's a start. A month and a half after the accident, the barges arrived. They came up the White Knife, pulled by sweating men, loaded down until the gunnels were inches from the water. Sand, tons of it. White silica from the coast. Limestone dust from the quarries. Barrels of soda ash. Roderick Castle rode ahead of the caravan, looking exhausted but triumphant. "It's here, my lord," Roderick reported, sliding from his horse in the courtyard. "Enough sand to build a desert." "Excellent," Ned said. He looked at the line of carts and wagons transferring the cargo from the river to the castle. Among the workers unloading the carts, there was a woman in a gray wool dress with her hair tied back in a severe braid. She carried sacks of soda ash with a surprising ease, moving efficiently between the wagons and the storerooms. "Anna," Benjen called out, walking over with a clipboard, "we need those sacks in the dry storage. If they get wet, they clump." "I know, Lyanna," Anna said, hefting a heavy sack onto her shoulder. "I'm not an idiot. I'm just doing the work." She wiped sweat from her forehead with a dusty sleeve. She liked the work. The physical exertion quieted her mind, kept the memories of the tower and the screams at bay. When she was carrying stone or sorting sand, she wasn't a fallen lady or a dead princess. She was just useful. "You're working too hard," Benjen noted, seeing the dirt on her face. "Ned said you could supervise." "I hate supervising," Anna grunted, dropping the sack onto a pile. "I like doing. Besides, if I sit still, I start thinking. And I don't want to think today." Benjen looked at his sister. He saw the grief she carried, hidden under the labor. "All right," Benjen said softly, "but take a break, or Ashera will have my head for working you to death." "Ashera is busy charming the cooks," Anna smiled thinly. "I'm busy building the future." She grabbed another sack. Less talking, more moving. The site Ned had chosen for the new glassworks was a hive of activity. The single experimental furnace had been replaced by a row of 5 massive, beehive-shaped kilns. They were built of firebrick, reinforced with iron bands Mikan had forged. A system of clay pipes channeled water from the hot springs through the walls of the workshop, keeping the ambient temperature tropical even as the snow fell outside. Ned stood on the catwalk overlooking the floor. "It's hot," Ashera noted, fanning herself. She was holding Cregan, who was fascinated by the glowing orange mouths of the furnaces. "It needs to be," Ned said. Below them, Benjen Stark was shouting orders. "Stoke it. 2-2. Swap out. Keep the rhythm." The workers were small folk. Farmers, tanners, potters. People Ned had handpicked for their steady hands and willingness to learn. They wore heavy leather aprons and tinted goggles. Ned had spent weeks training Benjen. He had poured the knowledge of the glass making, the chemistry, the timing, the safety protocols. Benjen had absorbed it with the desperate focus of a younger brother wanting to prove his worth. Now Benjen was the foreman. "Pour," Benjen commanded. 2 men used a massive pair of tongs to lift a glowing crucible from Furnace 1. They moved in sync, guided by Benjen's hand signals. They tilted the pot over the casting table, a massive slab of iron 10 feet long. The molten glass flowed like honey. It was clearer now. Ned had adjusted the recipe, adding a pinch of manganese to offset the green iron tint. "Roll it." The roller team moved in. They pushed the heavy iron cylinder over the glass, flattening it into a sheet. It hissed. Steam rose from the wet wooden tools. To the lair. They transferred the sheet to the annealing oven. Ned watched the process. It was crude by modern standards, but for Westeros, it was impressive. "He's good at this," Ashera said, watching Benjen wipe soot from his face. "He is," Ned agreed. "He likes the fire. It gives him a purpose." Benjen looked up, spotting them on the catwalk. He grinned, his teeth white in his blackened face. "We have 20 sheets today, Ned," Benjen shouted over the roar of the fires. 20. Double it by next week, Ned shouted back. "Slave driver," Benjen laughed, turning back to his crew. That night, Ned sat in his solar with Maester Luwin. The desk was covered in plans. "The glass is flowing," Ned said. "Now we need to use it." He unrolled a large map of the Winterfell grounds. "We expand the glass gardens here, here, and here." Ned pointed to the empty plots of land within the double walls. 3 acres to start. We used the nuclear panes, double-layered for insulation. Luwin adjusted his chain, looking at the drawings. 3 acres. My lord, that would produce enough food to feed the castle and the winter town. That's the point, Ned said. But it's just the start. Once we have the gardens built here, we export. Export. We sell the glass, Ned said. To the Umbers, the Karstarks, the Manderleys. I want every holdfast in the north to have a greenhouse. I want the price of grain in winter to drop to nothing because we are growing it ourselves. It will ruin the trade with the Riverlands, Luwin warned. They rely on selling us food in the lean years. Let them eat their own grain, Ned said. The north feeds itself. Luwin stared at the plans, his mind racing through the logistical implications. This wasn't just farming. It was independence. My lord, Luwin said slowly, these ideas, they are necessary, Ned said. Winter is coming, Maester, and when it does, I want the north to be a fortress of warmth. He looked at Luwin. Can you manage the numbers? The sourcing? The labor allocation? Luwin straightened. He was a man of the Citadel, a man of administration. This was a challenge worthy of his chain. I can, my lord. It will be monumental. Then get to work. Ned sat alone in the solar. The fire had died down to embers. He leaned back, closing his eyes. He checked his mental map. Glassworks. Operational. Spy network. Dismantled. Training. Progressing. Family. Safe. The water of life. The solar was warm, thanks to the newly routed pipes beneath the floorboards. But Ned Stark's mood was cool as he stared at the ledgers spread across his weirwood desk. Maester Luwin stood beside him, hands tucked into his sleeves, looking equally grim. The glassworks are operational, my lord, Luwin said. Lord Benjen reports that production has doubled in the last week. We have enough panes to glaze the first acre of the new gardens. Good, Ned said. And the cost? Significant, Luwin admitted. The sand barges from the coast, the coal from the Wolfswood, the extra rations for the workers. The treasury is bleeding, Lord Stark. We have the tax exemption, yes, but we are spending gold faster than we are generating it. Ned rubbed his temples. Infrastructure was expensive. In the civilization games of his past life, you just clicked a button and waited a few turns. In reality, you had to pay for every nail, every meal, and every hour of labor. He needed a trade good, something high value, low weight, and non-perishable. Something that could be exported to the south, or even across the narrow sea, to bring gold flowing back into the north. Glass was the long game. The food it produced would keep his people alive, but it wouldn't make them rich, not yet. He needed something faster. Ned stood up and walked to the sideboard. He poured himself a cup of ale. It was brown, thick, and tasted faintly of yeast and old barrels. It was sustenance, not pleasure. He looked at the cup. Alcohol. The north drank ale. The south drank wine. The Ironborn drank seawater, mostly. But no one in Westeros had mastered the art of high-proof, clean distillation. There were rumors of fire milk in the east, and crude moonshines made in hill tribes, but nothing refined. Nothing industrial. Ned smiled. Grain was heavy to transport. It rotted. It was eaten by rats. But if you fermented that grain, boiled it, captured the vapor, and condensed it, you turned 1,000 pounds of wheat into 100 bottles of water of life. Liquid gold that never spoiled, warmed the blood in winter, and got people drunk enough to forget the cold. Maester, Ned said, turning back to Luwin, how much barley do we have in the stores? A fair amount, my lord. The harvest was good. And potatoes? Luwin frowned. Potatoes? You mean the earth apples the mountain clans grow? Yes, earth apples. They are peasant food, my lord. Fit for stews, mostly. Fit for empires, Ned corrected. Set aside 100 bushels of barley, and get me as many earth apples as you can find. May I ask why, my lord? Are we expecting a famine? No, Ned grinned. We're opening a distillery. Ned spent the rest of the morning sketching. He drew a pot still. It was a beautiful shape, a large, bulbous copper kettle narrowing into a swan neck, which then fed into a spiral condensing coil submerged in a tank of cold water, the worm. He sketched the specifications. Material copper. Essential. Iron leaves a metallic taste and reacts with sulfur. Copper purifies. Heat source. Direct coal fire or steam jacket. Cooling. Constant flow of cold water from the springs, cooled first, or snowpacking. He designed a thumper keg, a secondary chamber to refine the vapor before it hit the condenser, increasing the proof without needing a second run. It wasn't just about getting drunk. High-proof alcohol was a disinfectant. It was a solvent for medicines. It was fuel. But mostly it was about getting drunk. Specifically, making a vodka so clean and smooth that the lords of the South would pay 10 times the price of Arbor Gold for a bottle of Northern Frost. Ned rolled up the parchment. Time to see Micken. The smithy was louder than usual. Since the success of the glassworks, Micken had become a very popular man. He had 3 apprentices working the bellows now, and the clang of hammers was a constant song in the courtyard. When Ned entered, Micken was inspecting a pile of iron frames for the glass casting tables. He looked tired, his face streaked with soot, but there was a pride in his posture that hadn't been there before. "My lord?" Micken nodded, wiping his hands on a rag. "More tools for the glass?" "The glass is doing fine," Ned said. He laid the new parchment on the anvil. "This is something else." Micken leaned over the drawing. He squinted. "It looks like a giant onion," Micken observed, "with a long neck." "It's a still," Ned explained, "for making spirits." Micken frowned. "Like a moonshine cooker? The clansmen make those out of old pots." "This is to a moonshine cooker what ice is to a butter knife," Ned said. He traced the lines of the diagram. "It needs to be copper, Micken. Pure copper. Beaten smooth. No leaks. The joints must be sealed tight." Micken whistled. "Copper is soft. Tricky to work large sheets of it without tearing. And expensive." "Tell me how much copper you need," Ned said. "I will buy the copper from White Harbor. I don't care about the cost. I care about the craftsmanship." Micken looked at the coil, the worm. "And this tube? You want me to spiral a hollow copper pipe?" "Yes. It needs to be long enough to cool the vapor back into liquid." Micken scratched his beard. "I can do it. Sand fill the pipe before bending it so it doesn't kink. Old trick." "Exactly," Ned smiled. "You're a master, Micken." "I'm a busy master," Micken grunted. "My lord, with the glass frames, the horseshoes, the repairs, I have 4 hands, counting my apprentices. You're asking for 12. "Then hire 12, Ned said instantly. Micken blinked. "My lord." "Expand," Ned ordered. "Send word to the Wintertown, to Serwyn. Any man who can swing a hammer or work a bellows. I'll pay them. Build a second forge if you have to. The third. I want Winterfell to have the finest metalworking shop in the north." Ned leaned in, his voice low and intense. "I need this equipment, Micken. I want to start production before the snows deepen. Can you do it?" Micken looked at the plans. He looked at the lord who was transforming the castle into a factory. "If you give me the men," Micken said, a grin splitting his beard, "I'll build you a copper dragon that spits firewater." "Get the men," Ned said, "and get the copper." While Micken hammered, Ned brewed. He took over a section of the kitchens, much to Gage's confusion. "You want to boil the barley, my lord?" Gage asked, holding a sack of grain. "Mash it," Ned corrected. He directed the cooks to grind the barley into a coarse meal. They mixed it with hot water in massive wooden tons, creating a thick porridge-like slurry. Wiki, enzymes. Malted barley converts starch to sugar. Ned had ensured a portion of the barley was malted, soaked and sprouted, to activate the enzymes. He stirred the mash himself, a lord paramount with a wooden paddle the size of a shovel, sweating in the heat of the kitchen. "It smells like porridge," Ashera commented. Walking in with Cregan on her hip, she wrinkled her nose. "It's the precursor to magic," Ned said, wiping his forehead. Once the mash had cooled, Ned added the yeast. He didn't have modern turbo yeast, so he used the barm from the castle's ale brewing. It was slower, but it would work. He sealed the tons, leaving only a small airlock to let the carbon dioxide escape without letting bacteria in. "Now," Ned told the confused kitchen staff, "we wait. Let the yeast eat." For 5 days, the tons bubbled. The smell in the kitchen annex changed from porridge to something sharper, sourer. The smell of alcohol. Ned checked the specific gravity by floating a calibrated wooden stick in the liquid daily. When the bubbling stopped and the stick sank to the mark, he knew it was ready. The Washington, a weak, sour beer about 8% alcohol. Now came the alchemy. Micken delivered the still on the 10th day. It was a thing of beauty. A gleaming copper bulb, 5 feet wide, polished to a shine. The swan neck rose gracefully, curving down into the thumper keg, which connected to the condenser coil housed in a large wooden barrel. They set it up in the courtyard, near the well. "It looks like a musical instrument," Arthur Dane said, circling the contraption. "Or a torture device." "Hopefully the former," Ned said. They filled the copper pot with the wash. Ned sealed the cap with a paste of flour and water, a simple dough that hardened with heat to create an airtight seal. "Light the fire," Ned ordered. Ben Jen, now an expert fireman from his time at the glassworks, lit the coals beneath the pot. Ned watched the temperature. He didn't have a thermometer, but he used the force. He needed to hit the boiling point of ethanol, 78 degrees Celsius, without hitting the boiling point of water, 100 degrees Celsius. It was a delicate balance. "Steady," Ned murmured to Ben Jen. "Not too hot. Low and slow." They waited. The copper heated up. Then the sound changed. A low rumble started inside the pot, like a beast waking up. "It's boiling," Micken said, stepping closer. Suddenly, the rumble turned into a violent shudder. The copper swan neck groaned. "Ned!" Ben Jen shouted. "Something's blocked." The foam from the grain had risen too high, clogging the neck. Pressure was building, fast. The copper sides of the bulb began to bulge ominously. A seam hissed, steam jetting out. "Run!" Micken yelled, grabbing an apprentice and pulling him back. "It's going to blow." Ben Jen scrambled backward, tripping over a bucket. The pot was ticking now, metal stretching under the immense pressure of the expanding vapor. If it exploded, it would send shrapnel and boiling liquid across the courtyard. Ned didn't run. He stepped forward. He reached out with his mind. Force grip. He didn't try to stop the reaction. He reinforced the container. He visualized the copper atoms. He visualized the seams holding. He clamped his will around the swelling metal, creating an invisible vice that held the structure together against the explosive force inside. The bulging stopped. The groaning metal shrieked, but held. Ned gritted his teeth, sweat popping on his forehead. Felt like holding back a landslide. "The valve!" Ned roared, his voice strained. "Open the valve, Ben. Now!" Ben Jen, seeing Ned standing his ground, scrambled up. He grabbed a pair of tongs and hammered the emergency pin Ned had designed on the side of the neck. Hisses. A jet of steam and foam erupted from the valve, screaming into the air. The pressure dropped instantly. Ned relaxed his mental grip. To the others, it just looked like the copper had miraculously held until the valve was opened. "Gods?" Ben Jen gasped, wiping foam from his face. "That was close." "Too close," Micken agreed, eyeing the still warily. "The metal, I thought it was gone. It stopped bulging." "Good craftsmanship," Ned lied, patting the hot copper flank. "You build them strong, Micken." Micken looked at the pot, confused, but took the compliment. I suppose I do." "Clear the blockage," Ned ordered, his heart still racing. "And let's try again. Gentler this time." 10 minutes later, a clear liquid began to trickle into the glass jar. "Methanol," Ned warned. "The 4 shots. Poison." He let the first jar fill up, then tossed it onto the coals. Whoosh! A blue flame exploded upward. "Now," Ned said, placing a fresh jar. "Now we get the hearts." The liquid that flowed next was crystal clear. Smelled clean, sharp, and sweet. The raw spirit was rough. It was essentially moonshine. Ned wasn't satisfied. He wanted vodka. He ran it through the still again. Double distillation. Then he did something the North had never seen. He built a charcoal filter. He took birch charcoal from the wolfswood, ground it fine, and packed it into a tall glass cylinder. He poured the spirit through the charcoal. It took days to drip through, but what came out the bottom was different. The harshness was stripped away. The fusel oils were trapped in the carbon. The liquid was impossibly clear. Smooth, viscous. Ned tasted it. It was clean. It burned, yes, but it was a warming burn, not a scouring one. It tasted of nothing but faint grain and purity. "Winter's breath," Ned named it. Ned mobilized the glassworks. "I need bottles," Ned told his glass team. "Not sheets. Bottles. Square ones. Thick glass." They made molds. They blew the glass into the iron forms. The result was a heavy, square bottle that looked like a brick of ice. It was distinctive. It looked expensive. They filled 50 bottles. They corked them with wax. Ned held one up to the light. The clear spirit inside magnified the world like a lens. It looks like water, Ashera said, examining a bottle. It's dangerous water, Ned warned. Best alcohol in the world. It doesn't spoil. It doesn't freeze. That night in the solar, Ned poured a small glass for himself, Ben, Jen, and Arthur. We have 50 bottles, Ned said. It's a start. What's the plan? Arthur asked, swirling the liquid. We send a crate to King's Landing, Ned said. A gift for the king. Robert will drink it, love it, and tell everyone in the court. The demand will create itself. And the rest? Ben, Jen asked. We sell it in White Harbor to the Bravosi merchants, Ned said. They appreciate purity. Once they taste this, they'll pay gold for it. Real gold. Ned took a sip. It was crisp, cold, and fiery all at once. It's the fuel, Ned said, looking at the map of the North on his wall. This pays for the roads. This pays for the walls. This pays for the future. You're turning Winterfell into a merchant's guild, Ben, Jen teased. I'm turning it into a powerhouse, Ned corrected. Winter is coming, and I intend to buy it off. He set the glass down. The square bottle glinted in the firelight, looking like a block of ice that held a fire inside. To the north, Ned toasted. To the north, Ben, Jen agreed. To the north, Arthur agreed. Chapter 35, The Viper in the Snow. The courtyard of Winterfell was a flurry of activity. Roderick Castle stood by a heavy wagon, checking the straps on the crates. He looked skeptical. To him, the square glass bottles inside were just fancy moonshine, but Ned insisted they were the future of the North's economy. Handle them like eggs, Ned ordered the loaders. If one breaks, that's a gold dragon wasted. He handed a sealed scroll to Roderick. For Lord Manderley, Ned said. Tell him to taste it. Tell him to serve it cold. And tell him to find buyers in Bravos. They like their spirits clear and strong. He handed a second scroll, sealed with the direwolf in white wax. And this is for the king. Tell Lord Manderl to send 10 crates on the next ship to King's Landing and the letter as well. Make sure the captain is loyal. I don't want Robert's gift ending up in a pirate's belly. Roderick nodded, tucking the scrolls into his belt. It will be done, my lord, though I still say it tastes like fire. It tastes like profit, Ned corrected. Safe journey, Roderick. The wagon rolled out of the Hunter's Gate, flanked by a dozen guards. Ned watched it go, the first export of the New North. If it worked, they would have gold to pave the King's Road. If it failed, well, at least the Night's Watch would be warm this winter. 2 days later, the horns on the walls blew again. It wasn't a traitor. It wasn't a bannerman. Ned stood on the battlements, looking south. A column of riders was approaching up the King's Road. They moved fast, their horses kicking up snow. Their banners were not gray or white or black. They were orange, a red sun pierced by a golden spear. House Martell. They made good time, Arthur Dane said, appearing beside Ned. The Sword of the Morning wore his gray cloak, but dawn was on his back. Grief has a way of speeding a man's journey, Ned said. He looked down at the courtyard. Elia Martell was there. She wore a heavy cloak of wolf fur over her Dornish silks, shivering slightly in the cold, but her eyes were fixed on the gate. She looked terrified and hopeful all at once. Rhaenys stood beside her, holding the hand of Willa. The little girl looked confused, sensing the tension but not understanding it. Let's go down, Ned said. The gates opened. The Dornish riders poured into the courtyard. They looked out of place in the snow, swarthy, dark-haired, dressed in silks and light leathers that must have been freezing. Their horses were sand steeds, beautiful and nervous, prancing on the ice. At the front rode a man who looked like danger personified. Prince Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper. He vaulted from his saddle before his horse had even stopped. He was dressed in snakeskin scales and orange silk, a spear strapped to his saddle. His face was lined with exhaustion, but his eyes were black fire. Elia! He didn't wait for guest rights. He didn't wait for introductions. He ran to his sister. Elia let out a sob and rushed to him. They collided in the center of the yard. Oberyn caught her, lifting her off her feet, burying his face in her neck. He held her as if he were trying to weld her broken pieces back together with the force of his arms. I'm here, Oberyn choked out, his voice thick with tears. I'm here, Elia. I swear it. Oberyn, she wept. You came. I was in Essos, he said, pulling back to look at her face. checking for injuries, for scars. I was in lists when the raven came. I rode day and night. I killed 3 horses. I would have killed 1,000. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her hands. I thought I lost you, he whispered, when I heard about the sack. About the mountain. I'm safe, Elia promised, framing his face with her hands. I am safe. Oberyn looked down. Rhaenys was hiding behind Willa's skirts, peeking out at this strange, intense man. And you? Oberyn said, dropping to one knee. He held out his hands. Little son, do you remember me? Rhaenys hesitated. Then she saw the smile on his face. A smile that was all warmth and no danger. She stepped forward. Uncle Oberyn? She asked. Yes, Oberyn said, his voice breaking. Uncle Oberyn. She hugged him. Oberyn closed his eyes, holding the last pieces of his family against the cold of the world. Behind him, a woman dismounted. Ellaria Sand. She was beautiful, exotic, and looked ready to stab anyone who interrupted the reunion. She walked over and joined the embrace, kissing Elia's cheek and stroking Rhaenys' hair. Ned watched from the steps of the keep. He felt a pang of sympathy. He knew what it was to lose family. He knew what it was to get them back. Oberyn stood up. He kept one arm around Elia, the other hand resting on Rhaenys' head. He turned to face Ned. The emotion vanished from his face, replaced by a mask of polite, lethal courtesy. The Viper was back. Lord Stark, Oberyn said. Ned walked down the steps. Prince Oberyn, welcome to Winterfell. Oberyn studied him. He looked for the savage Northman, the friend of the usurper, the man who had occupied the capital. Instead, he saw a quiet man with sad eyes and a stillness that felt like a coiled spring. You saved them, Oberyn said. It wasn't a question. I did what was right, Ned replied. Tywin Lannister wanted them dead, Oberyn said, his voice dropping. He sent his dogs. You killed the dogs. They were mad dogs, Ned said simply. They needed putting down. Oberyn nodded slowly. Dorne owes you a debt, Eddard Stark. A debt of blood and life. We do not forget. There is no debt, Ned said. Family is everything. I would hope you would do the same for mine. Oberyn looked at Ashera Dayne, who was standing beside Ned, holding Cregan. His eyes softened. Ashera, Oberyn said, bowing his head. The stars have been dim without you in the south. Oberyn, Ashera smiled, though it was guarded. You look tired. I am tired, Oberyn admitted. I am tired of death. His gaze shifted. It landed on Arthur Dayne. The warmth evaporated. Arthur stood tall, meeting the prince's gaze. He knew what Oberyn saw. He saw the white cloak, even if Arthur wasn't wearing it. He saw the man who had helped Rhaegar take Lyanna. He saw the man who had guarded the tower while Elia suffered in the capital. Oberyn took a step toward Arthur. His hand twitched toward his dagger. Dayne, Oberyn said, his voice cold. Prince Oberyn, Arthur replied evenly. You were his friend, Oberyn accused. His shadow. You helped him destroy my sister's life. Oberyn, don't, Elia said sharply, stepping between them. Not here. Not now. He left you, Oberyn shouted, his control slipping. He stood by while Rhaegar chased a wolf girl and left you to the Mad King. He followed orders, Elia said. Just as you would have. I would have gutted Rhaegar before I let him dishonor you, Oberyn snarled. And then you would be dead, Arthur said quietly. And Elia would be alone. Oberyn glared at him. The tension in the courtyard was razor thin. Benjen Stark had his hand on his sword hilt, ready to intervene. Enough, Ned said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of the force. It was a command. The war is over, Prince Oberyn, Ned said, stepping into the space between the Dornishmen and the knight. We are all survivors here. We all have regrets. There is a time and place for everything. He looked Oberyn in the eye. Arthur Dayne is Rhaenys' sworn sword, and I would prefer not to fight the man whose sister I just saved. Oberyn looked at Ned. He saw the steel in the Stark spine. He saw the way Ashera moved closer to Arthur. He saw the way Elia looked at Ned with respect. The Viper relaxed. He let out a breath. You have guessed right, Ned said, offering a small bowl of bread and salt that a steward had brought forward. Bread and salt. No harm shall come to you here. Oberyn looked at the bowl. He took a piece of bread, dipped it in the salt, and ate it. Bread and salt, Oberyn said. I accept your protection, Lord Stark. He looked at Arthur one last time. We will talk later, Sword of the Morning, when the wine is flowing. I look forward to it, Arthur said stoically. Come, Ned said, gesturing to the keep. The rooms are prepared. The hot springs are warm. You must want to wash the road off you. I want to wash the world off me, Oberyn muttered. That evening, the great hall of Winterfell was livelier than it had been in months. The presence of the Dornish brought a splash of color to the gray stone. They sat at the high table, shivering slightly in the draught, but eating with gusto. Ned sat in the center, Ashera to his right, Oberyn to his left. Elia sat beside her brother, looking more at peace than she had since arriving. So, Oberyn said, swirling his wine, you keep them here, as hostages. As guests, Ned corrected. Robert wanted them dead. Jon Arryn wanted them exiled. I wanted them safe. Safe in the wolf's den, Oberyn mused. It is a clever cage, Stark. You bind Dorne to the north. I bind Dorne to peace, Ned said. If Elia is here, Sunspear will not rise. If Sunspear does not rise, Robert does not march south. No more blood. And if Robert demands their heads? Oberyn asked, his dark eyes sharp. Then he comes through me, Ned said simply. Oberyn studied him. You mean that? I do. You are a strange man, Eddard Stark, Oberyn said. You won a war and took no crown. You hold the keys to the kingdom and you hide in the snow. What do you want? I want my people to survive the winter, Ned said. And I want my children to grow up without fear. He looked down the table. Cregan was sitting with Benjen, laughing. Jon was in a cradle near Ashera. Oberyn followed his gaze. Your son? Oberyn asked, looking at Cregan. My heir, Ned said. And the other one? Oberyn pointed his fork at the cradle. Ned didn't flinch. My natural son, Jon. Oberyn raised an eyebrow. You have been busy, the Honorable Ned Stark, fathering bastards. War changes men, Ned said, repeating the line he had given Robert. Oberyn looked at Jon. He looked at the dark hair, the gray eyes. He looks like you, Oberyn noted. He is a Stark, Ned said firmly. Oberyn smirked. Well, in Dorne, we do not hide our natural children. We celebrate them. You should bring him south one day. Let him taste a lemon. Perhaps, Ned said. The feast continued. Oberyn regaled the table with stories of Essos, of the fighting pits of Meereen, the poisons of Lys, the pillow houses of Tyrosh. Benjen listened with wide eyes. Even Arthur seemed to relax, listening to tales of a world far away from his failures. And this drink? Oberyn asked, holding up a glass of winter's breath. It is aggressive. It's vodka, Ned said. Keeps you warm. It strips the paint off a boat. Oberyn laughed. I like it. I'll take 10 casks back to Sunspear. My brother Doran needs to loosen up. After the feast, when the hall had cleared, Oberyn and Ned remained by the fire. Elia told me, Oberyn said quietly, staring into the flames. About Aegon. I'm sorry, Ned said. She said he died before the sack, Oberyn said. That she switched him. She did. It was clever, Oberyn admitted. Desperate but clever. And the boy who died? An innocent, Ned said. He has a stone in the crypts of the September, but he deserved better. Oberyn gripped his wine cup. I want to kill them, Stark. Tywin, the mountain's ghost. Everyone who touched her. The mountain is dead, Ned reminded him. Lorch is dead. Aerys is dead. Tywin lives, Oberyn hissed. He gave the order. He did, Ned agreed. And one day he will answer for it. But not today. Today we need peace. Elia needs peace. Oberyn looked at Ned. You hate him too. I despise him, Ned said coldly. But I will not start a war that kills thousands just to satisfy my anger. We play the long game, Prince Oberyn. We build. We grow strong. And when the time is right, justice will find Tywin Lannister. Oberyn smiled. It was a dangerous smile. I like the long game, Oberyn said. Vipers are patient. He stood up. Thank you, Lord Stark, for everything. Dorne stands with you. If you ever need spears, you have but to ask. And if you ever need snow, Ned smiled, you know where to find us. Oberyn laughed and walked away, his orange silk swaying. Ned watched him go. He had secured the south. He had neutralized the Dornish threat not with hostages, but with friendship. He looked at the fire. One step closer, Ned thought. The realm is stabilizing. He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the snow was falling softly. Peace had come to Winterfell. But in the back of his mind, the force whispered of the cold to come. Rest now, Ned told himself. Tomorrow we build the wall.